Hello and welcome back to Carthy Poetry. So today we're going to be talking about meter. First we're going to start with the basics and then I'll give a cue for when we jump to the more advanced stuff so that if you're not ready for it, you can just stop the video there. So let's get started. Alright, meter or to meet, M-E-T-E, means to measure. So what things do we measure in our lives? For example, we all measure time. We might measure time with a watch and count seconds, minutes, hours, days, or years. We also measure distance, like with inches, centimeters, meters, so forth. We might measure how big we are with a belt, also distance. Changing our belt loops. But if we ate a little bit on Thanksgiving, we're going to add an extra inch there so we can digest that. So meter in poetry refers to measuring how many syllables are in a line. So a syllable is the amount of sound that we get out in one unit of measurement, right? So we have syllable, syllable. There's 3 syllables there. So you can count syllables by counting them under your chin. Syllable. Or with your fingers. Syllable. So in my book, Let's Write Poetry, I wrote a little introduction to meter that's more basic. So we're going to do a poem. I'm going to read a poem. You see that I've got a little poem here and also a little ruler for measuring things. And I want you to count these out with your jaw. It's not perfect, but it's a good way to count syllables, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's learn some more. We'll count our sounds in syllables. Listen, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Each line has 4. Call this meter. Sounds like Peter. It measures words, cuts lines like swords, cuts poetry, as you will see. So did you see how I had 4 syllables in each line? I split those up over the lines of the poem. So that's what meter is in poetry. When you're writing poetry, you have a certain amount of syllables in each line. And then you will count those out to measure them and see how many you want in each of your lines. And that doesn't always have to be the case. You can write poems that don't even have meter, that just count however many syllables they want. But a lot of poems that are really good have a certain amount of syllables in each line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's learn some more. It's a classic, okay? So now that we've talked about that, that's the basic of meter. Measuring our syllables in our lines of poetry to make sure they match, or that they're slightly different but they're consistent, that they're the same over the time of the poem. So now let's look at some more advanced stuff. So in poetry there are syllables that are stressed and unstressed, or stronger or weaker than others in a line. For example, to be or not to be. The to is softer, so it's to be or not to be. So it goes soft, strong, soft, strong, soft, strong. Okay, so we have stronger or weaker syllables. So in poetry, syllables often go together in groups. Like in this picture here, we have a soft and then a strong. These groups are called feet. So this foot, a soft and then a strong, is called an iambic foot. An iambic is where it's a soft syllable or an unstressed syllable followed by a strong syllable or a stressed syllable. Okay, and so another type of foot is a trochaic. A trochaic foot is where you have the strong and then the soft. So we have a strong here and then a soft. An example of this can be found in the poem The Raven. Quoth the raven nevermore. Another type of foot as well is found in the, which is stressed, stressed, or dactyl, stressed, unstressed, unstressed, or anapest, unstressed, unstressed, stressed. So these are the different types of feet that I'm mentioning today. There are others as well, but here are some combinations of syllables to use in poetry. And I should clarify that this is poetry in English, because poetry in English, we stress our syllables in different ways. You may be asking why we do this. The answer is it helps our reader feel what we want them to feel.
it's really easy to feel loving and bouncy when your lines are flowing along in that way. In the same way, it's very easy to drive a pace with a very forward stressed meter. So now let's see how we can combine feet to make different lines in common meters. So if you only have 1 foot per line, you'd be using monometer. 5 feet per line, pentameter. Octameter or octameter for 8 feet per line, and so on. And lines don't necessarily all have to have the same amount of feet in them. But sometimes they do. For example, in most of Shakespeare's works, he wrote it in iambic pentameter. So he had 5 iambic feet in each of his lines throughout the poem. So catalectic means that you drop a syllable at the end of your line. So here I've got iambic, so it's soft, strong, soft, but it's catalectic, which means I drop that last strong syllable. Acatalectic means just the opposite, that you have all of your syllables there.
All right, I know that was a lot and that it was kind of dry. I understand that. Thank you for watching. This is the language of meter. So now when you read some essay about a poem or you're trying to determine how to structure your poem, you can look at this and say, okay, well, I want to do this in iambic pentameter, just to go to a common favorite, or I want to do it in common meter, or whatever it is that you want to use. You can now understand how you can measure your lines, stanzas, and poems according to established syllables and feet. So, hope you enjoyed it. Go ahead and drop a question or poem down below, and I'd love to read it. See ya.